Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights.
Of 90. I hope the cooperative spirit continues and we see this legislation passed soon so Canadians can get this much needed help coping with the higher prices. And I hope, Madam Speaker, that this same cooperative spirit can prevail in this place with Bill C-31 because it also delivers much needed help for lower income Canadians struggling with higher prices, and they don't want to see politicians stalling on the help they need with political gains. There are two main components in this legislation. The first relates to dental care. While we here in this place benefit from generous employer-provided dental plans that cover us and our dependents, many Canadians are not so lucky. They are forced to pay for needed dental services out of pocket, including for their children, and beyond the cost of regular cleaning for their children, dental emergencies can also become financial emergencies and force very hard choices. Making life more affordable for families across the country must include making oral health care accessible for all. Dental care is an important part of overall health, yet in Canada, 1/3 of the population cannot afford it. Creating a proper national dental system from coast to coast to coast, integrated as part of Canada's healthcare system, will take time and cooperation and coordination with the provinces and the territories. But recognizing that we need to start helping Canadians with these costs now. This legislation proposes a new temporary Canada dental benefit. The benefit would provide dental care for uninsured Canadians with a family income of less than $90,000 annually, starting with children under 12 years old in 2022. The Canada dental benefit would allow all eligible parents to access direct payments totaling up to $1,300 per eligible child under the age of 12. Up to $650 per year to support the costs of dental care services. Once the program is live, Canadians will be able to access the Canada dental benefit through their CRA accounts. And the CRA is prepared to deliver and make it as easy as possible for eligible Canadians to get the money they need for oral health care. Dental health is an important part of our overall health and should not need to be sacrificed for financial reasons. With this bill, we are taking an important first step and putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians that need it the most. The second major component of Bill C-31 relates to housing. Affordable housing and the high cost of safe and suitable housing is one of the biggest issues for the residents of my riding of Scarborough Centre. And this legislation addresses one of the major components of housing that is so often ignored by the official opposition: rental housing. While they have a lot to say about home ownership, they have little to say and little to offer for those that rent their homes. I have a lot of renters in my community of Scarborough, and many of them are trapped in inadequate and substandard rental housing that doesn't meet their needs. I say they are trapped because they can't afford to move to a bigger unit or a nicer unit that could better suit their needs. Because the market rent is now well beyond their means. And if they were to leave their current unit, it would be rented out for many hundreds of dollars a month more. Even within the guidelines, rent increases in combination with other high prices families are facing are difficult to manage. As part of the National Housing Strategy,
I apologize to interrupt the Honourable Member. Can I ask the Honourable Members to please keep the sound low so that we can listen to the speech the Honourable Member is making? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As part of the National Housing Strategy, we are addressing the issue of affordability and a lack of rental housing construction and capacity. We have introduced the Rapid Housing Initiative, a $2.5 billion program to finance the construction of modular housing, as well as the acquisition of land and the conversion of existing buildings to affordable housing. The Rental Construction Financing Initiative gives developers low-cost loans during the riskiest phases of construction. This helps developers to better predict cost, and they are more incentivized to build the rental projects, all while meeting important criteria in terms of affordability, accessibility, and energy efficiency. These programs are working, Madam Speaker, but it will take time to have an impact and begin bringing prices under control. And Canadians need help now. That's why this legislation proposes to invest $1.2 billion to provide a direct federal Canada Housing Benefit top-up payment of $500 to 1.8 million renters who are struggling with the cost of housing. This is in addition to the $4 billion we are already investing to provide an average of $2,500 in direct financial assistance with the cost of rent to Canadians across the country through the existing Canada Housing Benefit. This new one-time benefit would be available to applicants with incomes below $35,000 for families and $20,000 for the individuals who pay at least 30% of their income on rent. If this legislation is passed, eligible renters will begin receiving payments before the end of this year. To be eligible, applicants must have filed their 2021 tax return and will need to attest that they are paying at least 30% of their adjusted net income on rent. Families must have a net income of $35,000 and individuals have an income of less than $20,000. An estimated 1.8 million low-income renters, including students who are struggling with the cost of housing, would be eligible for this new support. Madam Speaker, this is help that my constituents very much need. It will put more money back into the pockets of lower-income Canadians who need it to help buy groceries and put gas in the car so they can get to work. I urge my colleagues not to delay in passing this important legislation. Let's deliver help to those that need it the most. And
questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Sir Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank my colleague for her remarks. It's interesting, though, going back to the previous Liberal speaker, that Liberals don't want us to be talking about the carbon tax today. It's not surprising why they don't want to hear us talk about their plan to triple the carbon tax. But the reason we're raising this, of course, is that it speaks to the Liberal government's approach to affordability. They're presenting these measures as their so-called affordability package, but the reality is they are continuing to increase taxes on Canadians. They have scheduled automatic tax increases for next year. The Liberals plan to raise payroll taxes and triple the carbon tax. So this is central to the debate today, because when the government says they're concerned about inflation and affordability, frankly, they weren't talking at all about inflation until the member for Carleton became Conservative leader. They were completely ignoring the issue. Now they say they care about it, but they're persisting with tax increases. Why are they persisting with their tax hikes?
Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Climate Action Incentive provides an annual credit for an individual in Ontario, in my home province, of $373 for an individual and $186 for a spouse or common law partner, and $93 per child under the age of 19. Every dollar raised through carbon pricing in Ontario goes back to the residents of Ontario. And the less you pollute, the more you save. When we are talking about affordability and helping Canadians, why does the honourable member want to take hundreds of dollars out of the pockets of Ontario families?
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. Honorable député de Laurent.
The honourable member for Laurent-sur-la-Berne. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened closely to what my colleague opposite was explaining in depth about this relief and what could be done as a one-off to help the public with these difficult times. And I'd like to know what my colleague has to say to my constituents who, since 2015, when the Liberal government took office, so 7 years have gone by, where significant investments were made, and there's still a shortage of housing. What does my colleague have to say to those people?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member. Housing is an issue, and since we came into power, we have invested into the National Housing Strategy, and I have seen firsthand the increase in the rental units through the rapid housing investments. We have been able to invest. In my own riding, there has been an investment of 57 additional units, and we had a groundbreaking ceremony. The money is going into the different housing projects, and I think investing $2.5 billion in modular housing is really increasing the rental stocks. Thank you.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank my colleague for her intervention today. I wonder if she wouldn't mind talking a little bit about, we stand in this place and we talk about how dental care is so important for the health of children, for children under 12. But it is also a financial benefit. It is beneficial when our healthcare system is under attack and is so overburdened that children are not having to go for emergency care in the emergency rooms, that we are doing preventative work. And I wonder if she could comment on the value of that and perhaps how dental care is similar to things like mental care and pharmacare, which also are very cost effective as a preventative measure for further hardships on our healthcare system.
For Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for her advocacy on the dental care. Every Canadian deserves good oral health care, and it is a key component to overall well-being. So that's why we as a government are committed to working to build a comprehensive, longer-term national dental care program. I think it is really very important because when I talk to the families in my riding, it's really very heartbreaking to see that some families cannot afford to take their kids for even simple things like cleaning. So I am really proud to stand in the House today to support the temporary dental benefit, which will provide up to $1,300 to the families for the kids to take care of their dental needs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, statements by members. Déclaration de députés. The honourable member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, I'm excited to rise today to announce the October 1st marked the start of the German Heritage Month. What better way to celebrate than by experiencing Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest, which will be kicking off this Friday with the official keg tapping at Anwser Square in front of Kitchener City Hall. This will mark the start of 10 days of excitement and activities throughout the Waterloo region, including the famous nationally televised Thanksgiving Day Parade on Monday, October the 10th. Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest is the largest Bavarian festival in North America, and over its 53 years of existence has grown to include 40 family and cultural events. I invite all members of this House to join Uncle Hans at one of the 6 Festhallen located throughout the region, and enjoy wonderful German food, dance, and beverages. Oktoberfest is wunderbar. Prost.
The Honourable Member for Coast of Bay Central, Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, it is with great sadness that I stand here today to pay tribute to the late Dr. Bradley Truman Knoll. On September 10th of this year, after partaking in a motorcycle ride to raise money for the Courier Mandé House in Senegal, Dr. Knoll lost his life in a moose vehicle accident while returning home to Springdale. Doc, as he was affectionately known to his students, was a pastor, teacher, mentor, and a friend to so many in our province. He had the ability to challenge beliefs on difficult subject matters with love and empathy. An example of this is his recent book, Tinder, Tattoos, and Tequila, Navigating the Gray Areas of Faith. To quote one of his colleagues, Brad was a mentor and friend to so many, regardless of background, religion, or age. His death has left a huge hole, but his life's impact and legacy will live on in those he has invested in and mentored. That is the true measure of a leader. To the love of his life, Dr. Melinda Knoll, his family and friends, and the hundreds of students that studied under him, know that our hearts and prayers are with you. Sole Deo Gloria.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame de Grâce Westmount. Mr. Speaker, it is a great pleasure to highlight the important contribution of Siméon Pompey to his community of Notre Dame de Grâce and to the students of Dawson College. He has been awarded by Force Avenir a prize for his great work at Dawson College and for all of his participation
through his leadership of the Comité Jeunesse NDG Community Recreation Services. Many of his students at Dawson College find employment at our community recreation centers and parks, where they lead summer camps, reading clubs for kids, bocce for seniors, and animate numerous activities in the parks. Simeon has expanded his love of golf to include a children's life skills program called First Tee. Simeon supports causes and communities with humility, hard work, and a commitment to families. Mr. Speaker, it is my great honor to recognize Simeon Pompey as a distinguished teacher, community leader, and father in my community. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Shefford.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, this afternoon, one of my constituents, Sylvie Paquette, will receive the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Early Childhood Education for her achievements as an educator at the Mamie Pond Daycare Centre in Saint-Césaire. Quebec is proud of its daycare centre model, implemented by the first female Premier, Pauline Marois. Quebec's CPE daycare centres are a wonderful model for early childhood development and for allowing women to return to the workforce. This award recognizes Ms. Paquette's work, teaching methods, and pioneering spirit, not to mention her dedication to ensuring that children have every opportunity to get the best possible start on life. This concept of equal opportunities is part of Quebec's social safety net, one that we wish to continue to pursue. Congratulations, Ms. Paquette. Keep being a strong partner of all families who entrust you with the care of their children, and keep up the creativity.
L'honorable député d'Argenteuil.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La Petite Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud and happy to rise once again to talk to you about a weightlifter from my riding of Argenteuil-La Petite Nation, Étienne Jolicoeur. He distinguished himself by winning the North American Open in Calgary on September 16th and 17th, where he lifted a total weight of 241 kilograms. He's just 16 years old, and he won the gold medal in the 67 kilogram category, competing with junior and senior athletes. He has a bright athletic career ahead of him. Another athlete, Mathieu Blais, also excelled, ranking 5th in the 73 kilogram category, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Argenteuil-La Petite Nation has a history of excellence in weightlifting. I'd be remiss if I didn't commend Guy Marino for the great work he does in training talented young athletes in weightlifting. Congratulations, Etienne and Matisse. You are worthy ambassadors of Argenteuil-La Petite Nation. I admire you greatly. Thank you.
Van.
Canadians are getting sick and tired of this out-of-touch NDP Liberal coalition government. Their support is plummeting across the country. Canadians see hope in a strong, unified Conservative team that will give them back control of their lives. It's very telling that the NDP has signed a secret backroom deal to prop up this arrogant Liberal government till 2025. And Canadians will respond accordingly during the next election. Mr. Speaker, it has gotten so bad for the federal NDP out west that their provincial comrades in Saskatchewan don't even want the member from Burnaby South, the current federal leader, around. I can't believe it. The home of Tommy Douglas decided to uninvite the federal NDP leader to their provincial convention. The reason? The NDP leader and his party would rather prop up this Prime Minister and the incompetent government than stand with the hard-working people of Saskatchewan. Our leader and Conservatives will always put the people first.
The honourable member for Scarborough-Gilboy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the larger-than-life Bill Blakey in full Scots regalia piped in the Robbie Burns dinner, carved the haggis and called down the wrath of Burns in Gaelic, we were absolutely convinced that the perfidious English were storming Parliament Hill. A Scotsman, Bill could have been a stand-in for Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies. I shared a few faith and politics panels with Bill, he the social gospel New Democrat, and me an endangered species, an evangelical liberal. Bill's faith and politics were well integrated, but as I pointed out to him, it's a lot easier when you're in perpetual opposition. No Milliquist, Bill enjoyed carving up pontificating Liberal cabinet ministers as much as the haggis. In a pinch, a Conservative would do just as well. Many a House leader found that Bill knew the rules and procedures of the House better than they did, much to their chagrin. A great man, a great bear of a man, a great parliamentarian, a great Christian. To the member of Elmwood Transcona, we share in your family's loss. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Etobicoke North.
Freedom rallies are taking place around the world to protest the death of Mahsa Amini, who went to visit relatives with her family just like we would do. But instead of receiving a warm embrace from loved ones, she was stopped by the so-called morality police, taken into custody and beaten. She died 3 days later. Mahsa was just 22 years old with her whole life ahead of her, and her death is unforgivable. To the brave women protesting the death of Mahsa Amini, who are met with arrests and bullets, we see you, we hear you, we stand with you. There must be a prompt, impartial investigation into her death. Crackdowns on protesters must stop. Respect for human rights must be upheld, including freedom of expression and peaceful assembly and association. Human rights are universal, non-negotiable, and indivisible. Mr. Speaker, women's rights are human rights.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, the new Conservative leader will put the people first. Their paychecks, their savings, their homes, their country. But the carbon tax is an utter failure. The Liberal government would have you believe that it will drive emissions down, but emissions have gone up under their tenure. BC's had a carbon tax for 14 years, and their emissions have gone up 4 megatons. Quebec's had a similar program for 12 years, and they've gone up 4 megatons as well. And the reality is the carbon tax drives the price of everything up, and it's punishing on Canadians who can least afford it. The Liberals would have you believe that you'll get more money back than you pay, but the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said this is false, and many Canadians will pay more. Still, the Liberals are planning to triple the carbon tax in April of 2023. Clearly, the Prime Minister is experiencing the carbon tax differently than hardworking Canadians. Yet help is on the way, Mr. Speaker. A Conservative government with our new leader will scrap the carbon tax.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil, Charles-Lemoine. Mr. Speaker, over the past few weeks, many of my constituents have written to me to express the horror that they feel about the horrific situation currently unfolding in Iran. Like them, I was deeply shocked on September 16th when I learned that Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman, died after being arrested by the police. What crime did she commit? She didn't wear her hijab in accordance with government standards.
Protests that have erupted across Iran since Mahsa's death have been met by unspeakable brutality on the part of Iranian forces, who in some cases have used live ammunition to disperse the crowds, killing dozens. My daughter-in-law's family is from Iran. While I'm incredibly thankful that they're here in Canada enjoying the freedom of our country, I am outraged to see so many innocent people lose their lives simply because they are peacefully protesting in the street. I call on Iran to put an end to all forms of harassment and discrimination against women and to respect their citizens' right to peaceful protest. Zan, Zandagi, Ozadi.
The Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
The devastating impact the Liberals are having on our country will be deeply felt this Thanksgiving. At a time of record high inflation and rampant unaffordability, many Canadians will struggle to afford their Thanksgiving meals. Others will find it difficult to pay for fuel or fare to visit loved ones, and those traveling by air will be faced with delays and cancellations. Some will be seeing family for the first time in years after being forced apart by a government that can't even provide basic services to its citizens. These are the realities facing Canadians, but the Liberals deny they're responsible for any of it. It's Trudeau, Mr. Speaker. This Thanksgiving, Canadians will overcome these challenges. They will make sacrifices to gather with family, to share a meal, and to give thanks. Their perseverance is inspiring and should serve as a reminder that it is not the government that makes Canada what it is. That's why I'm thankful that ordinary Canadians are committed to reclaiming the can in Canada.
Before we go on to the next statement, I just want to remind the honourable members that they're not to mention someone else's name. They refer to them as their title or the riding that they come from, but not their name. And if they're trying to be clever, you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly. So I don't want to have to cut anybody off on their SO31 because I know how important it is to each individual MP. L'honorable député de Bellechasse,
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Chemins de Lévis. Mr. Speaker, people feel like they've lost control over their wallets and their lives. This Liberal government has doubled our national debt, more than all previous governments combined. This is the most spendthrift government in Canadian history. The more they spend, the higher prices climb. And the result? Families have to alter their menus and recipes to offset the 10% increase in food prices. Seniors are delaying their retirement. Their savings are evaporating due to inflation. Students have to sleep in shelters. Canadians in their 30s live in their parents' basements because of home prices. Single mothers are putting water in their children's milk to deal with the 10% increase year over year. Canadians are worried, rightly so. Most of them are struggling to make ends meet. These are Canadians. These are our people. It's our duty to serve them. We need to give them back hope. Our new Conservative leader will put people first. He will prioritize their paychecks, their savings, their homes, and their country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Acadie-Bathurst. Mr. Speaker, the 22nd Soirée des Éloises was held in Petit Rocher this past weekend. The Éloise Awards celebrate the dynamism, quality, and originality of the creative work of Acadia's professional artists. This gala is unique in Canada, as it is the only one that awards prizes in all artistic disciplines: dance, theatre, music, visual arts, media arts, and literature. I extend my sincere congratulations to all of the finalists, and especially to the award winners from my riding of Acadie-Bathurst. Monel Doiron won Artist of the Year in Dance for the CCNB's Péninsule Acadienne Les Oiseaux. René Blanchard won Artist of the Year in Media Arts for Le Silence, a documentary. And Edith Butler was given a Lifetime Achievement Award for a career spanning over 50 years. to the Acadian Association of Professional Artists of New Brunswick, to its president, Philippe Beaulieu, to its Director General, Carmen Gibbs, and to their teams, thank you very much for your hard work to defend and promote the rights and interests of Acadian artists. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
De la Prairie.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers have just under 6 hours left to go vote. I invite all those who have not yet voted to go and do so as soon as possible. Here's my message. Go for a walk, get on your bicycle, get in your car, go alone, go in a big group. No matter how you go and vote. Go choose the person you want to represent you in the National Assembly, in the great place of Quebec's democracy. Go and vote because you know what you want, or because you know what you don't want. Go vote for health, education, the environment. Go vote against higher taxes or for higher taxes. Vote for your vision for the economy. Go and vote for a party that you relate to. All reasons to vote are good reasons, Mr. Speaker. Election day does not belong to politicians. It belongs to the people. The people will be heard today. The louder their voice, the clearer the message. So, we must vote. We have the great fortune of being free to vote for whoever we want. Let's take advantage of it. Let's go vote in droves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Calgary Shepherd.
For too long, we've allowed the tyrants of Tehran and Qom to terrorize the people of Iran and Rojhelat, to steal their rights, engage in extrajudicial arrests and disappearances, crush protests, and target women. The response of Tehran to massive protests at the murder of Gina Mahsa Amini is the collective punishment of the Kurds in Rojhelat and the persecution of Iranian protesters for simply demanding their rights be respected. Over 2,000 arrests have followed, beatings, hangings, and a bombing campaign across Bashur and Rojhelat, hitting civilians in places like Koya, Oshnavie, Marwan, Shno, and sites in Iraq, including areas near Erbil and Sulaymaniyat. 50,000 Canadians took to the streets in Toronto and all across Canada to rally for a free Iran and democratic rights. Millions worldwide have joined in solidarity demanding justice for Gina Mahsa Amini. The tip of the autocratic spear oppressing the people of Iran and Rojhelat is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. There is only one moral, ethical choice for Canada: to list the IRGC as a terrorist organization in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Malpeque.
September 23rd, Hurricane Fiona made landfall as the strongest hurricane in Canadian history. The 48 hours that followed are some Atlantic Canadians won't soon forget. Coastal communities where fishing is their primary livelihood have been devastated, with small craft harbors, fishing gear, and boats destroyed. Agriculture and farming will take years to build back. In addition to the wrecked barns, silos, crops, and equipment, the mental health of farmers who work every day to feed Canadians and their quality products has taken a serious blow. Even PEI itself looks different, with some of our iconic coastlines eroding upwards of 30 feet. This extreme weather event, intensified by climate change, will affect every single islander for years to come. While there are many reasons to feel defeated, the community response has been truly heartwarming. First responders, line crews, Canadian Armed Forces, and essential workers have been working around the clock. Municipalities opened reception centers across the island. Businesses donated food to ensure everyone had a hot meal. And neighbors opened their doors to one another to charge a device, use a freezer, or have a cup of coffee. As we rebuild and recover, I call on the federal government to continue to support impacted residents and communities in my riding and across Atlantic Canada every step of the way. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be an Islander. Thank you.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Since the Liberals took power, housing prices have doubled. According to the Royal Bank, an average paycheck to pay monthly bills for an average house is 60% of that check. That's the highest level in all of our history. And what's the Liberal solution? To triple carbon tax on gas, heating, and groceries. Canadians can't pay more. Will the government cancel its plan to triple the taxes? The Honourable Minister for the Environment. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question. This gives me the opportunity to talk about the fact that our carbon tax is one of the most effective in the world because it will reduce greenhouse gases, which went down by 9%, unlike what we heard on the other side of this House. And 100% of revenues generated by the carbon tax are returned to the provinces. 90% of households and 10% of municipalities and Indigenous communities. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Liberals have missed every single emissions target they've set since they put it in. And according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the vast majority of Canadians are paying vastly more in carbon tax costs than they get back in rebates, a problem that's about to worsen as the government plans to triple the tax on gas, groceries, and heat. Canadians are already cutting back on their diets. Adults are living in their folks' basement because they can't afford a new house. Will the government cancel this insane plan to triple?
Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, I have a riddle for you. Who said, and I quote, "We recognize the most efficient way to reduce our emission is to use pricing mechanism." You could say it's the Minister of the Environment, or my friend and colleague, the Minister of Natural Resources, the Deputy Prime Minister of the Minister of Finance, but no, Mr. Speaker, it's the member of Durham, and I agree with him. Pricing mechanism is the most effective way to fight climate change pollution, and he said that in April of 2021, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Tripling a tax at a time like this is not just insane, it is cruel. And this is going to happen even in British Columbia. They have their own tax there, but the federal government, the costly coalition of the NDP and Liberals, want to force BC to triple its tax now, at a time when gas prices are $2.40 a liter. So once again, for the third time, will they cancel their plan to triple the tax?
The Honourable Minister. Speaker, and I want to thank the Leader of the Opposition to allow me this opportunity to talk about the fact that they were getting there next time. Carbon pricing is good. Now, what they wanted to put in place is the principle of pay to pollute. That's not how we do this on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. The principle is polluter pay, not pay to pollute. Next time when they flip-flop again on carbon pricing like they've done about 15 times in the last 10 years, pricing pollution is good and polluter pay principle. They need to go that extra step, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, there they go. They want to divide and distract. They attacked the little old lady living in rural Newfoundland, calling her a polluter for the crime of heating her home in February. According to the Liberal Premier of that province, after the forthcoming increase in the carbon tax, the increased cost of heating the homes of rural Newfoundlanders will have gone up by 80%. Worse yet, this government wants to triple the tax. Why won't they axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to announce that we are putting in place a program to help tens of thousands of Canadians to get off home heating oil. Price of home heating oil is skyrocketing because of the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Mr. Speaker, we will put $250 million to help tens of thousands of Canadians go to clean, efficient, renewable energy in Canada to heat their homes and save money, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, great. Just what we need. A new government program to help us pay the cost of a government tax. Don't worry if you live in the countryside of Atlantic Canada, where 40% of people now live in energy poverty after this government has been in power for 70 years. There's a new government program coming. So you need not worry about freezing in the dark as this new tax comes in. That's what they want people to believe. Canadians are not stupid. Canadians are not polluters. They have to heat their homes and travel in a big cold country. Will this government cancel its plan to triple?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand that climate change is real. And Canadians also understand that the global economy is in the midst of a green transition. It's the biggest transition since the Industrial Revolution. Our government believes we need to help Canadians with the green transition. We need to help Canadian companies like our auto manufacturers, and we need to help Canadian families like those families in Atlantic Canada which want to get off home heating oil. We're going to help Canadians with climate action because that's the right thing to do.
L'honorable député de Trois-Rivières.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, deciding to make Roxham Road and all of its facilities permanent raises serious ethical questions. The government has awarded at least 7 untendered contracts to 2 Liberal donors. We don't know if there are more, because the government refuses to disclose all of those contracts. This afternoon, I will be asking the Ethics Committee to look into the ethical aspect of awarding these contracts. If the government has nothing to hide, it should disclose these documents. Will it release all the federal documents related to Roxham Road?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Transparency and accountability are extremely important for our government. Rental contracts were negotiated based on fair value in order to get a competitive price. Revealing confidential contractual information would break the agreements that we have with these providers. We will work with departments and organizations to meet their needs through fair and open contracts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, frankly, we're not talking about top secret documents. We're talking about leases signed for land, trailers, and hotel rooms. By refusing to reveal these contracts for Roxham Road by using questionable excuses, the government is sowing doubt. It's the government itself that's bringing to mind the billions of dollars that went untendered to the Liberal family during the pandemic. It's the government who's suggesting it has something to hide. Why is the government waiting to be forced to be transparent? Why not just disclose them? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, transparency and accountability are critically important to our government. The rental agreement was negotiated based on fair market value to arrive at a competitive price. Given the location of the land and its proximity to the border, this was an ideal location for CBSA to use for this purpose. Our government is delivering open, fair and transparent procurement processes while obtaining the best value for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
Tens of thousands of homes and businesses are still without power in Atlantic Canada after Hurricane Fiona. People have been unable to leave their homes and go to work. They need urgent help as they continue the long recovery. The Atlantic provinces are asking for employment insurance to help people get through this crisis, and so far they've had no response from this government. Will the Liberals do the right thing and move immediately to waive EI rules for Atlantic Canadians so that these families can put food on the table at this this critical time.
The Honourable Minister for Employment.
We understand the seriousness and the challenges that Atlantic Canadians are facing when it comes to work right now, and we are there with them on the ground. Service Canada has waived the requirement for record of employment. We're looking at what we can do to be more helpful. We're on top of this, Mr. Speaker, and I can assure you that we will be there for Atlantic Canadian workers.
Honorable député de Rosemont, la petite patrie.
Ils l'ont fait pour la Colombie-Britannique.
They did it for BC, and now it's time to do it for Atlantic Canada. The Conservative leader is attacking workers to give millions to CEOs. A premium's not a tax, it's an investment in the future. With a recession seemingly inevitable, families will need protection. Workers are at risk of losing their jobs, and the Liberals are dragging their feet on EI. The old regime is letting people down, and the Liberals are doing nothing. We need a modern, effective, accessible system for seasonal and self-employed workers. When will the Liberals wake up? In the middle of a recession? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Our government understands that our EI system needs to be more fair and better adapted to the needs of Canadians. That is why we've committed to completely modernizing the EI system. We have launched the long-term plan to improve the EI system. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Echoed around the world over the weekend as hundreds of thousands of people protested against the terrorist regime in Iran. Here in Canada, we're among the biggest protests. But the Prime Minister didn't have the guts to show up because he didn't want to have to explain why he has failed to criminalize the IRGC, the terrorist arm of the Iranian government, which killed over 50 Canadians when it attacked a civilian aircraft. Will the Prime Minister have the guts to stand in today and announce he's banning this terrorist organization?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
We condemn in the most unequivocal terms the tragic killing of Mahsa Amini, and we stand with the women, her family, and her supporters at this very difficult time. And there needs to be consequences for everyone who was responsible for that killing and indeed all of the transgressions of human rights in Iran, which is why there are tangible consequences, including just last week the Minister of Global Affairs listing the morality piece as one of those parties that will be sanctioned. We will continue to explore all options when it comes to holding those responsible and defending human rights here and around the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We don't need symbolic sanctions. We need real action against this terrorist organization, and we need it now. The Minister says he's still exploring. This terrorist organization murdered over 50 Canadians by shooting down a civilian aircraft over 2 years ago.
That's right.
This government promised they would ban that terrorist organization not long after that. They still haven't done it. It is perfectly legal for that group to raise money, organize logistics on Canadian soil after it killed our people. What kind of Prime Minister fails to stand up for his own citizens after they've been murdered? Why won't he stand in his place today and ban this group?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, what is happening in Iran is completely unacceptable. This is the regime that is persecuting women. This is the same regime that decided to down Flight PS752. Therefore, we are sanctioning the RGC's core leadership. We are imposing new sanctions. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? We will do more because more needs to be done. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Louis-Saint-Laurent.
Mr. Speaker, Friday morning, in my riding, I attended an event and attended the inauguration of the community fridge. These events were connected to food assistance. Many families in Quebec and Canada are facing challenges. Everybody needs to eat, but not everybody has the money to do so. Is the government aware of this reality? And could they do the bare minimum, which is to not increase taxes? The Honourable Minister of Family. Mr. Speaker, we understand that costs of living for families are high. That's why, in 2015, we introduced the Canada Child Benefit. From 2015, it has raised 450,000 children in this country out of poverty. Mr. Speaker, we are there for families. We have been there for families, and we will be there for families. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the basics. Food, families in need. People who used to be able to give food but now have to take it. We are a G7 country, and food banks aren't enough. And what does this government want to do? Increase taxes. Can this government have a heart and understand that the Liberal carbon tax is no, no, no? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand very well that Canadian families are experiencing trouble. That is why we are going to increase payments to ease the burden of inflation. These measures will give $500 to Canadian families. Now is the time for Conservatives to support our plan for dental care for children and housing payments. That's real support.
New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, there are two constants with this Liberal government. Liberals have never seen a tax they do not like. They have never seen a tax they will not hike. Conservatives know that a dollar left with Canadians is better than in the hands of the politicians who taxed it. So will this government cancel its plan to triple its carbon tax on groceries, gasoline, and home energy fuels?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte. I don't understand how going from $50 to $65 is a tripling, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Triple. This government will triple the tax on gasoline, triple the tax on energy, and make everything Canadians buy more expensive. Liberals don't have a plan for the environment. They have a bone-crushing tax plan. The carbon tax is costing families more and more each day. Canadians know it. A carbon tax is a tax on everything. The Liberals are pushing Canadians to the brink of financial dissolution with their high tax agenda. Will the government cancel its plans to tax gasoline, energy, and home energy fuels?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fact, BC has had a price on carbon for the last 10 years. Their pollution level has gone below 2007 level. Quebec, 3% below their 1990 levels since they've had a price on pollution. The European Union, 24% below their 1990 level. They've had a price on pollution for the last 15 years. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer said that Canadians would be getting more money from pricing on carbon this year, next year, the year after that, and the year after that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Thérèse de Blainville.
Mr. Speaker, Quebec's tourism industry is sounding the alarm. The decision to end temporary EI measures without a comprehensive reform is putting Quebec's regions at risk. Imagine being a seasonal worker. 10 days ago, you qualified at 420 hours, and now, suddenly, you have to accumulate 700 hours. We're talking about entire industries and regions where it's exceptional to go over 500 hours in a season. This is a betrayal of workers. Will the minister rectify the situation before it's too late? The Honourable Minister of Labour. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is exactly why we've decided to extend the pilot project for seasonal workers. And that's why we have committed to completely modernizing the EI system in Canada. The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, if the tourism industry is sounding the alarm, it's because it's threatened. It's afraid of losing its workers, like all seasonal industries in Quebec. If the federal government deprives employees of employment insurance this winter, how many will be able to come back next summer, do you think? And if employees don't come back, where will they find replacements in the middle of a labor shortage? When will the minister finally understand that by putting workers in misery, she's dragging seasonal workers down too? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand the specific issues of seasonal workers, and that is why we extended our seasonal worker pilot project. That's why we are working on modernizing EI. We will always be there to support workers. The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, pilot projects are not resolving eligibility criteria. By reverting to old EI rules without a reform, the minister is jeopardizing not only workers but also employers, and the result is a perfect recipe for regional decline. First, deprive workers of EI to force them to change jobs or move. Then, deprive entrepreneurs of labor and push them towards closure. This is how Quebec's regions are losing their vitality. Does the minister realize what she's aiding and abetting? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course, we are always there for workers. We've made many changes to the EI system, including extending from 15 to 26 weeks sick leave benefits. We're working on modernizing the EI system as a whole, and I will have more details soon.
The Honourable Member for Regina Louvain.
Because of Liberal incompetence, the average Canadian family pays more in taxes than they spend on food, shelter, and clothing combined. Families across the country are struggling to just get by, and this out-of-touch government just doesn't care. Our people need a break. So on behalf of Canadians, will the Prime Minister cancel his triple tax hike on gas, groceries, and home heating?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we absolutely understand that Canadians today are struggling with the cost of living. And that's why we have put forward a plan to give vulnerable Canadians a double GST tax rebate. That will mean nearly $500 for Canadian families. 11 million Canadian households will get that support. And I'm really glad that the Conservatives have come around and support this important plan. Now is the time for them to also support Canadians struggling to pay their rent with our program, and to support Canadian kids under 12 with dental care.
Honourable Member for Regina Louvain.
What an arrogant and condescending response. That rebate will be eaten up by home heating costs in a week, Mr. Speaker. Canadians need much more help. It's too little, too late. As we near the coldest months of the year, this incompetent Liberal government is tripling the tax on gas, groceries, and home heating. Canadians will have to decide between heating their homes and buying healthy food for their family. So my question is simple. When will this out-of-touch government stop triple taxing Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Family.
Mr. Speaker, I see the Conservatives are doubling down on their bad math today. But let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. This government, in partnership with the government of Saskatchewan, where that member is helping families right now. In fact, the government of Saskatchewan announced through the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Initiative that they have reduced childcare fees by up to 70%, Mr. Speaker, well ahead of schedule. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, that helps families with the high cost of living, whether it's buying nutritious food, getting winter clothes, whatever it is that they need, we are helping families. I hope that the member opposite knows that we and the government...
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, it's
It's reported that 1 in 6 small businesses are having such a tough time they're considering closing. Restaurants Canada reports 85% of restaurants have taken on new debt, and yet the Liberal government defends forcing payroll tax increases on small businesses. The Associate Minister of Finance said small businesses on payroll tax increases, quote, can afford this. And the Finance Minister herself admitted that raising EI premiums will bring in an extra $2.5 billion. Will the government end their planned tax hikes on small businesses?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for her questions and for her persistence on this issue about supporting small businesses. We share that persistent prioritization. What we've been doing for the past 2.5 years is supporting small businesses through the pandemic with targeted wage supports and supports for rent. What we've been doing since the pandemic is we've launched a women's entrepreneurship strategy, a blank entrepreneurship strategy, and we're empowering Indigenous businesses. We know that the power of small businesses will be unleashed through inclusive growth, and that is what we are prioritizing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Courtney Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are suffering and even dying because getting help for their mental health isn't affordable, and wait lists are months or even years long. This week is Mental Illness Awareness Week, and mental health organizations are once again calling for this government to recognize there is no health without mental health. During the last election, the Liberals promised to spend $4.5 billion over 5 years to expand mental health services and address backlogs. They still haven't delivered. So when will the Liberals follow through on their funding promises to improve mental health services for struggling Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question and the ongoing advocacy, particularly in this Mental Illness Awareness Week. Mental health is health, as he said, and our government has made mental health a priority. And since 2015, we've made historic investments to support the $5 billion to the provinces from 2017, $600 million every year, still ongoing, almost $600 million for distinctions-based mental health and wellness strategy for Indigenous people. We know that we need to do more, and we will do more.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are clawing back the Canada Child Benefit from parents who needed pandemic supports. But you know what they're not clawing back? The wage subsidy from corporations that gave out executive bonuses or shareholder dividends, like Air Canada, who got $554 million and gave out $10 million in bonuses, or Imperial Oil, who got $120 million and paid out $324 million in dividends. Why are the Liberals clawing back child benefits from single moms trying to feed their kids while letting big corporations off the hook?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government absolutely believes in supporting Canadian children and Canadian families. That is why we have worked so hard to put a national program on early learning and childcare in place that is going to help families with affordability, help our economy. That is why the Canada Child Benefit, which has lifted hundreds of thousands of Canadian children out of poverty, is such an important program. And Mr. Speaker, we know that everyone in Canada has to pay their fair share. That is why we are imposing a COVID recovery dividend on our banks and insurers.
Well, Member for Mississauga-Malton.
Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Mississauga-Malton, rent and housing costs have risen for so many, especially working individuals, families, and our most vulnerable. They need help, and they need it immediately. Can the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion please tell this House what our government is doing to help renters and those struggling with the cost of housing through this difficult time?
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for Mississauga-Malton for his important question on hard work on this important file. We know that the cost of affordable rent is increasingly out of reach for many Canadians. That's why we introduced legislation to introduce a one-time top-up of $500 that will help 1.8 million renters and is on top of the already existing average $2,500 as part of the Canada Housing Benefit. I urge Conservative members to stop getting in the way and help us to pass this important legislation so that we can get this important rent relief to Canadians as soon as possible.
The Honourable Member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Constituents in BC are tired of this government cutting into their paychecks. Yes, they are. Yet the Prime Minister plans to triple the carbon tax, raising fuel, heat, and grocery costs, and increase paycheck taxes, killing jobs. The Finance Minister even admits the money will not go into EI. It will go to cover out-of-control government spending. That's shocking. Their paycheck taxes will take $2.5 billion extra out of the hands of hard-working Canadians. Incredible. Will the government end their planned tax hikes on Canadians' paychecks?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's really important for us to be clear and honest with Canadians about their pensions and about EI. Right now, at a time of real uncertainty and volatility in the global economy, it would be the height of irresponsibility to cut our contributions to the Canada Pension Plan and to EI. Too many Canadians depend on both. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, our government is absolutely committed to supporting Canadian seniors, to supporting the Canadian workers who depend on EI.
Excellent. Member for Abbotsford.
The inflation crisis in BC is exploding. It's not only food and shelter costs that are taking a hit. Vancouver's gasoline prices are now the highest in North America. Yet the Prime Minister wants to force BC to triple the carbon tax on everything, making life completely unaffordable for families. While the Prime Minister fiddles around, life has become hopelessly expensive, and Canadians are now losing hope. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister now cancel his plan to triple the carbon tax on gas, groceries, and home heating? Yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think we're all really glad to hear today from the member for Abbotsford, who is an MP we all know and respect. And so I listened to him carefully during the campaign when he said, quote, "I'm deeply troubled by suggestions by one of our leadership candidates that candidate would be prepared to interfere already at this stage in the independence of our central bank." So I wonder if the member for Abbotsford has persuaded his new leader to see the wisdom of his previous comments.
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, the Tax and Spend government plans to raise the carbon tax from the current level of $50 a tonne to $170 a tonne by 2030. British Columbians are already stretched thin by an out-of-touch government who is now asking BC to triple its carbon tax, making life even more unaffordable. Mr. Speaker, will the government back down from forcing BC to triple their carbon tax on gas, groceries, and home heating?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier during this question period, I referred to the member for Durham who spoke about the benefit of pricing carbon to fight pollution. I would also like to refer to the member of New Brunswick Southwest who also urged his premier, and I quote, to adopt the federal system because checks will be rolling out to New Brunswick families. That's exactly right, Mr. Speaker. We can work to fight pollution, work to fight climate change, and help Canadian families. I agree with the member from New Brunswick Southwest, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, this government remains out of touch with reality. With an increase of more than 10% in food prices and the absurd tripling of the carbon tax by this government, things can only get worse, not to mention the 35% tax on fertilizers, which many farms have not yet recovered from. Farmers want help to feed our families with safe and nutritious food, but their inputs have only gone up under this government. Will the government stop its plan to triple the carbon tax on Canadian farmers? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question, and I know it's a bit complicated, but the price on pollution, the federal price, does not apply to Quebec because Quebec has its own system of cap and trade. we decided to respect that, as we did with all other provinces that wanted to have their own system for pricing pollution. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Avignon-Lamétis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, again last night in Montreal, shots were fired right in the middle of the city and a body was found in the trunk of a burnt-out car. The situation keeps getting worse. This year will beat last year for shootings, even though last year was the worst in a decade. Mr. Speaker, the first step in fixing a problem is to acknowledge its existence. The problem is illegal guns coming across the border. Does the minister realize he hasn't come up with any effective measures at the border to control this traffic? The Honourable Minister. Our thoughts, first and foremost, go out to the families of the victims. It's a very painful time. We've invested heavily in strengthening security at the borders, and we're bringing criminals to justice who've attempted to import illegal weapons. It's a problem. There are a lot of challenges, but we will continue with our plan. And our legislation will stiffen penalties for organized crime. We have to pass that bill as quickly as possible. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Avignon-Lamétis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, not much progress. There are 1,100 guns seized at the borders last year, but at the same time in Montreal and Toronto, 2,500 guns were seized, more than twice as many. This proves guns are crossing our borders and reaching our cities. Last year, Yves Francoeur from the Police Brotherhood said on Tout le monde en parle that it's become all too common to catch young people with illegal weapons that they've bought for themselves for self-defense because they're living in fear. That's what gun culture is all about. The more guns there are out there, the more you need one. It's a vicious circle. Does the minister realize that this culture is expanding on his watch? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague. We have to break that cycle. And that's why we will continue to invest in cooperation with Quebec, $40 million to support police, as well as $18 million to prevent gun violence in Montreal. And we have to go even further with Bill C-21 with more resources. And we're going to do that work in cooperation with the Bloc. Thank you very much.
Thornhill. This weekend, millions around the world protested the brutal dictatorship in Iran demanding freedom. Students at Tehran Sharif University are being brutalized and arrested by the regime. 50,000 people came together in Richmond Hill to demand the IRGC be listed as a terrorist organization, and the Prime Minister didn't even bother to respond to the invite. MPs passed a motion in this House almost 4 years ago to designate the IRGC as terrorists. We need actions, not words, broad sanctions, not a free pass. What time today will the government list the IRGC as a terrorist organization in this country?
Obviously, we're standing with the courageous women and all the people of Iran who are standing up and fighting for their freedom, and I must say also for their future. That is why I raised that very issue not only at the UN last Monday, but also when I was in Washington on Friday at ICAO, and over the weekend also with key Iranian women. This morning we met also with the families of Flight PS752. We will make sure to hold accountable the regime for this. We've imposed sanctions. We'll do more. We will be imposing new sanctions very soon, Mr. Speaker.
For Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the virtue signaling of this government's fake feminist foreign policy needs to stop. Projecting lights on the building of Parliament isn't going to punish the brutal dictatorship's morality police from killing women. It won't get justice for the victims of 752. The government has failed Iranian Canadians. It has failed to protect the freedom of women demanding it. It has failed to stand up against the tyrants in Tehran. Will they finally list the IRGC as terrorists today?
Speaker, this is not a partisan issue. we are all together in denouncing what is happening in Iran. And I really hope I can work with my colleague on this and with all the members of the opposition, because of course we're united in making sure to hold accountable the perpetrators of this awful regime. We want to make sure that we do things right.
I'm going to interrupt the honourable member. I appreciate some honourable members trying to practice their French during question period, but not while somebody's speaking. It's just not parliamentary. The honourable minister, please, from the top so we can all hear your answer.
So from the top? Sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, this is a very important question for Canada. We want to make sure that we work all together in this House, because indeed we need to make sure that this is not a partisan issue. This is a question of making sure that those perpetrators are held accountable at the international level. We need to make sure that we work all together on this. We will work with other countries in the world, and those who are going against those women, including those who are responsible for the killing of Gina Mahsa Amini, will make sure that they're...
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, the minister speaks about us being all together. We were all together 4 years ago when Liberals voted with Conservatives to immediately list the IRGC as a terrorist entity. This minister, this Prime Minister, the entire Cabinet voted for my motion to list the IRGC 4 years ago, to immediately list them, and yet they didn't do it. That's the problem, Mr. Speaker. We have more empty words from the minister, and yet we have 4 years of complete inaction. PS 752 didn't move them to action. The murder of Mahsa Amini still hasn't moved them to action. We need to replace hollow words with real action. It's a...
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the face of the atrocious violations of human rights, this government has taken concrete action by ensuring that the state is listed as a supporter of terrorist activity, by listing the IRGC Quds Force because it is a purveyor of terrorism, Mr. Speaker, and by last week ensuring that we sanction the morality police who are responsible for the killing of Mahsa Amini. We need to be united on this, and we need to take...
I'm just going to interrupt the honourable member. The honourable member asks a question, then shouts while the answer is coming back. I just want to remind him that if he wants to hear the answer, he's going to have to stop shouting. We'd appreciate it if he stopped shouting while I'm speaking as well. The Honourable Minister from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I was saying, when it comes to the atrocious human rights violations, and in the face of that action, we have taken concrete action, including ensuring that Iran is listed as a state suborner of terrorism, ensuring that we list the IRGC Quds Force, ensuring that last week that we sanction the members of the morality police who were responsible for the killing of Mahsa Amini. Mr. Speaker, we will never stop defending human rights when it comes to this side of the House. We need to be united on that, not play partisanship. Thank you.
Honourable member for London West.
Mr. Speaker, protecting all Canadians is a top priority for our government. This means working for a criminal justice system that's effective, fair, and above all, compassionate toward victims. Given the importance of having a strong voice to represent victims, can the Minister of Justice tell us more about the recent appointment of the Ombudsman for Victims of Crime? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for London West for her question and her excellent work. I was indeed very proud to announce the appointment of the new Ombudsman, Benjamin Roebuck, a recognized expert who's done over 15 years of research in the field of victimology. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to support victims in our justice system in every way possible, be it through our investment in agencies that assist them, a new and particularly capable ombudsman, or, Mr. Speaker, by allowing the resources of our system to be used to fight serious crime. Mr. Speaker, our government will always be there for victims.
The Honourable Member for Charleswood St. James of Sivaboya Headingley.
Mr. Speaker, Mahsa Amini is dead.
for the high crime of showing her hair. Tomorrow marks 1,000 days since the IRGC shot down Flight 752, killing 55 Canadians. The U.S. declared the IRGC to be a terrorist organization over 3 years ago. Sanctioning a few individuals today doesn't go nearly far enough. It's time to send the tyrants in Tehran a clear message. When will this government wake up, see the IRGC for what it is, and finally list this horrible terrorist entity?
Mr. Speaker, our government will continue to take concrete action to ensure that no one, whether you're from Iran or any place in this world, who violates human rights, who commits acts of terrorism, who commits the kind of brutal killing of Mahsa Amini or any other woman or any other member of a vulnerable group will have safe haven in this country. We will ensure that those who are responsible are sanctioned, and we will continue to explore all options to defend human rights here and around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, we are talking about murder. Surely that deserves more than simple, empty words from the minister opposite. We are talking about a 22-year-old Iranian woman who was killed because she neglected to wear her hijab properly. The entire world is watching. Canadians are calling for action, and this government has empty platitudes to offer. Surely we can do better. Surely. I am calling on this government. I am asking them on behalf of Canadians. When will the IRGC be determined a terrorist organization?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I agree with my colleague and our outrage regarding what's going on in Iran. For all the Mahsa Aminis in the world, we need to stand up, and we are standing up. That's why we are sanctioning ERCG, and we are sanctioning the key leaders, the perpetrators behind this tragedy and these atrocities. But indeed, we need to do more. We need to shed light on what is going on in Iran. We need to stand with the courageous women that are fighting for their future, and we are. And I hope that I will work with, I can count on my colleague.
The honourable member for Charlesbourg-Haut-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government will never cease to amaze us. After coming to power in 2016, they removed sanctions against Iran, and then, in response to the murders and torture committed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the Prime Minister decided to bring back sanctions, saying the Revolutionary Guards have committed egregious acts. Egregious acts is a way for the Liberals to avoid using words like murder of innocent and defenseless women, men, and children. When will the Prime Minister list the IRGC as a terrorist organization? The Honourable Minister. What's going on in Iran is totally unacceptable. That regime is persecuting women, and they also created the tragedy of the passenger jet that was shot down. And that's why we've imposed stiff sanctions, and we will continue to impose new ones. And I hope my colleague will stop playing petty partisan politics, because this is the type of situation that requires the House to be unanimous, and I hope they will work with us. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Health Committee heard conclusively from experts that pediatric dental care is part of the overall Children's Health Plan. The president of the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario stated that they have kids in pain because they can't get dental surgery, the part of it that they would see, with 7/8 of them not getting that surgery on time. Mr. Speaker, why is it that the Conservatives want to obstruct kids from receiving a benefit that would prevent the burden of dental disease? Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health please tell this House the importance of passing C-31 so that children can get the treatment that they need this year for good oral health?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And first, I'd like to thank the honourable member from Guelph for his consistent advocacy, particularly on health-related matters for his constituents in Guelph. I was at that meeting last week, Mr. Speaker, and according to the Canadian Dental Association, over 2.26 million school days a year are missed because kids are getting tooth decay and other tooth-related matters fixed at their dentist, and fully 1/3 of day surgeries accounted for by surgeries for kids between 1 and 5 for their teeth. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, the burden of dental diseases is concentrated in those from low-income families, Indigenous children, new immigrants, and children with special health-related needs. So by putting this benefit in place, our government is taking action. So when will the Conservative...
Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, energy workers in Western Canada are frustrated because this government has no credible plan for a just transition. Now, compared to Joe Biden, who is transforming the American economy with massive investments in clean tech to create what he calls good-paying union jobs. But this Prime Minister has missed every single climate target. He's shown no vision for the incredible potential of a clean energy economy. So my question to the Environment Minister is, will this government put the necessary money on the table to create a clean energy future for Canadian workers and their families?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the business of lowering emissions is a complex one. It requires people with talent and determination and ingenuity that will lead and build the energy industries in this country. Energy workers will build CCUS. They will build up lower carbon fuels and hydrogen, and we cannot get to net zero without them. We are delivering strategic investments in skills and training and regional strategies and projects right across Canada that will create sustainable jobs. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back in April, even before this government approved the Bay du Nord drilling, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, pointing out that we are on track to more than double the 1.5-degree Paris target, said this, and I quote, "Some government leaders are saying one thing and doing another. Simply put, they are lying," close quote. Since 1990, our emissions have risen more than any other G7 country. When Antonio Guterres says some government leaders are lying, which country's leaders do we think they are referencing?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I thank my honourable member for her colleague and her dedication to the issue of climate change over many decades. As the IPCC has said, countries need to be reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by at least 43% by 2030. We're on track to meeting at least 40% reduction and on our way to meeting 45% reduction, Mr. Speaker. We are doing more right now than any other country in the G7 to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Our investment on a per capita basis are 3 times what the Americans just announced with the IRA in the U.S. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Excellent.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have today for questions. Please, talk to Ms. Avon. I see a member rising on a point of order. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, there have been consultations among parties, and I believe you will find the unanimous consent of the House for the following motion: that the House stand in solidarity with the people of Iran fighting for their freedom against Iran's tyrannical dictatorship and those protesting the brutal murder of Mahsa Amini at the hands of the morality police because she dared to confront the Iranian regime and fight for her freedom. And B, express its disappointment that the action was not taken by the government on June 12, 2018 motion adopted by this House calling for the IRGC to be listed as a terrorist organization, and once again call upon the government to list the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization in Canada.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.